Hey, y'all, I'm Bud Elliott, and this is Cover 3 College Football Summer School. We've done our research on the teams, and now we're bringing on the top team experts from the 247 Sports Network to help us fill in the blanks. Please follow us on Twitter at Cover 3 Podcast. That's Cover 3 Podcast. And leave us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. All right, class is in session. Hey, guys, Bud Elliott here, and welcome back to another edition of the Cover 3 Podcast. This is our summer school special. And today we're talking a little UCF Knights, and here we have joining us Jeremy Brenner from Knights247 to talk about it.
Thanks, bud. You know, if I never liked summer school, but I'll go to summer school with you. How about that?
Perfect. Let's do it. So Gus Malzahn came in what was thought of, and probably still thought of, as quite the coup hire for UCF after Josh Heupel and Denny White left for Tennessee, and put up a pretty solid first season. Obviously live down here, just like you do. A lot of UCF fans on the group chat had kind of mixed emotions about some of the results, but it's hard to complain about 9-4, I guess, in year one.
9-4 with mostly a true freshman at quarterback who didn't know he was going to start at the beginning of the season. So, that's just at the quarterback. We had injuries at quarterback, receiver, all over the defense. So to come out with 9 wins last season is an accomplishment, and it's kind of the floor, the foundation. And now the Knights have something to build on during the Malzahn era as we close out our time in the AAC and move to the Big 12, hopefully by next season.
Absolutely. So offensively is where we'll start. Obviously, Gus runs a much different system than what Heupel ran, and before him, what Scott Frost ran. Although I guess it's more similar to what Frost ran than it is to anything Heupel ran. So an adjustment to be sure for everybody on offense there. They were 29th in rushing efficiency, 113th in passing efficiency. As you noted, Dylan Gabriel goes down very early in the year, and that was difficult. But that kind of meshes with what Gus Malzahn does well. His teams always run the heck out of the ball, and passing is sometimes good and sometimes maybe not quite as good. Obviously, they're not looking for a 29-113 split, I would say, in most years. But I am curious, the name that caught my eye here in the transfer portal, John Rice Plumlee was a dude who played a lot of quarterback when Ole Miss had Rich Rod as their OC in 2020 or 2019, maybe it was. But it was a couple of years ago. They gave that LSU national championship team hell. Is he coming in as a quarterback, and what do you expect him to do?
So John Rice Plumlee was the quarterback at the spring game along with Mikey Keene. That's really what the offseason is going to be defined by, is this quarterback battle between Mikey Keene, the incumbent starter, who wasn't great in 2021, but give him a full offseason under Gus Malzahn and have him be the QB1. Could see some growth there. And we have seen some growth. There was some improvements and some throws he made in the spring game 2 weeks ago that he didn't make in the regular season. So I think when it comes to that, Plumlee's really interesting. I really didn't think that he was going to come in and really challenge that guy. I really honestly thought Thomas Castellanos, who is Gus's quarterback recruit from Georgia, he came in, enrolled early, was part of the spring team. I thought he was going to be the favorite for quarterback, but John Rice Plumlee is proving why he was a quarterback to begin with at an SEC school. And I feel like a lot of people forget about that. He got replaced by Matt Corral, same guy in his class, who's going to be a day 2 pick at the worst this weekend. So, comparing him to that is difficult, but you get him at UCF. The skill players are incredibly talented, like you mentioned, but it's the running back room is insane. You got Johnny Richardson, Isaiah Bowser came back. Mark Anthony Richards can give you a little juice. They have 4 or 5, they have about 3 or 4, maybe even 5 running backs that could, make some noise this season. And then receivers, even though you lose Jalen Robinson to the transfer portal, you do have Ryan O'Keefe. Amari Johnson's been playing really well. Jalen Griffin's expected to be an exciting part of this offense as well. And you also bring in Kobe Hudson, who was the number 1 receiver at Auburn last season. So if you put a bunch of talent around these quarterbacks, they're expected to have good results.
I also like that, and I'm not going to sit here and say that Malzahn is not capable of having a pass first or good passing offense, because I don't know that to be true. But I do know that Gus Malzahn absolutely knows what he's doing with a running quarterback. And most of the offenses that people are going to look favorably upon what Malzahn does have involved a running quarterback. Go back to the team that almost won the national championship in 2013. Nick Marshall was not a quarterback at Georgia, but a cornerback at Georgia. I mean, he had SEC corner level athleticism. And honestly, like, if for people out there that haven't seen Plumlee, and you've obviously seen him, I've seen him as a recruit in college, he has like legitimate Major League Baseball, like center field speed as well. I mean, like the dude can really run. It's like, oh, it's a nice scramble. It's like, oh, that's a 70-yarder. So I just think everything flows so much better with Malzahn's offenses when he has a quarterback that can really, really run. And I also like, just from a, hey, that makes sense to me perspective, with Castellanos, because Georgia and Florida State wanted him to play running back. I'm like, all right, Gus has another dude who has SEC level, running back ability, but who can throw enough to play quarterback in this offense that's kind of native. It's not wing T, but it's sort of derived from that wing T attack. I like what I see there with that, and I like they're moving in that direction. That'll be interesting. As you mentioned, Bowser's back. This offense should score a heck of a lot of points. You relative amount of confidence in the offensive line, I assume, as well.
Yeah, so the offensive line did take some hits. Sam Jackson's not returning, but you do have, and Cole Schneider as well. But there is enough on that, like basically the offensive line, I think, is going to be more dominant in the run game. I think, as you've mentioned, but you're looking at a team here that can run the ball in a whole different, and that's going to be the primary idea for this team. Even if it's not exactly the running backs doing the running, you could see a little bit from Plumlee. You could see a little bit of Castellanos. I do think there's going to be some screens run for Ryan O'Keefe, and maybe we see him even as like a runner kind of guy. That is probably the most concerning part of this whole offense, is that offensive line, just because they aren't as veteran heavy as we've seen in the past. But you've got guys like Lakaki Paule. He's in the interior. He's been here, I think, 3 years now. I think going on year 4. Matt Lee, the center, he's back. So there are some veterans on this line. It's not as much as we've seen in the past, but there's enough there to keep this offense afloat.
For sure. So on the flip side, defensively, UCF about 40th in the power ratings, which is not terrible. But they had an enormous split, almost the exact opposite of what the offense had. So they were 11th in pass efficiency defense, but they were 105th in rush efficiency defense. So that's kind of hard to do. You don't usually see like top 15, bottom 15 splits like that, but that's what they came out to. And then the defensive line, obviously Big Cat Bryant moves on. Cam Good goes to Michigan. What's your assessment of the defensive line here as they look to improve on, obviously stay getting after the passer, but maybe get a little better at 105th in rushing defense?
God, the defensive line might be the most, it's probably the unit that I would put the most question marks around, simply because there's a lot of change going on. We also don't know what Trayvon Morris-Brash's role is going to be. We're looking at a very new front seven. Tatum Bethune also moves on, goes to Florida State. They did get some transfers as well. So I wouldn't use any stats from last year to really kind of see the tea leaves for this team, just because it is a really brand new defense. But I mean, if you saw any games last season, that this defense was basically how the Knights were able to win a lot of these games down the stretch. It turned into a total 180 from the offense being the ones dictating if the team won or lost the defense. And I think that's a big testament to Travis Williams' ability to coach, defensive coordinator. I wouldn't be surprised if this was his last year at UCF, because he'll have opportunities to be a head coach elsewhere. And I am almost worried, because I think Travis Williams was a major reason why that success came from that defensive line last season. So a lot of question marks, but there is a lot of upside. Terrence Lewis from Maryland comes in as a transfer. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he meshes with the group. They just minutes ago got a transfer from an All-American linebacker at UAB, Chris Moll, I believe his name is. So they've got a lot of interesting transfer pieces. That's kind of how they've built this defense for this year, and hopefully that'll be enough to keep this team from not losing these games. I think what this team's MO is going to be is let's let the offense score points. That's been UCF's identity for the past 5-6 years now, is let's let the offense score, and the defense, you guys just make sure we don't lose the game.
For sure. And I thought one of the things they did exceptionally well last year, especially in the back end, was explosive play prevention. Down the stretch, you just saw the unit come together. Very few blown coverages, and they not that they were allowing a ton of underneath stuff, but they did a really good job at limiting explosive pass plays. They were actually they're fourth in the country in explosive pass prevention, which is, part of that's probably some of the QBs they played down the stretch, but also like they thought they did a hell of a job against the schedule that they played. And now, just looking at this, everybody on this secondary who played more than 100 snaps last year returns. That's going to be the strength of this team, right? I would guess.
On the defense, yeah. On the defense, I'd say Devod Wilson's back. They added Kobe Perry, which I think is going to be a huge deal. He did get injured during the spring game, but I don't think it's going to affect him in the summer and whatnot. That is how this team is going, or that's how the defense is going to build itself, right? It's going to look towards its veterans. That's what it did last year, and that's why Tatum Bethune ended up rising as this, primary defensive piece. But now that he's gone, they're gonna look towards those veterans in the backfield, in the secondary. That is how this team is going to win football games.
As far as any additional transfers, I assume they have a couple more spots left.
I'd be surprised if they didn't. Gus Malzahn has proven that he's incredibly adaptive in terms of how he builds this team. And I think you kind of have to be in this world of college football where the transfer portal is as big as it's ever been. And Gus Malzahn's always keeping his eye open. And what I like about Gus and what he's done with UCF is he is keeping a local focus as well. And with UCF becoming a Big 12 school now, they're the only school in Florida with that isn't, it's not just Florida State, and Miami anymore. And if you look at the results from last season, UCF arguably had a more successful season. And there is a legitimate reason for Florida recruits to not just stay in Florida, but go to UCF. You're close to home, but you're also competing against this, Power 5 talent now. And I think that it's a huge part of his recruiting now, and it's going once the team fully becomes a Big 12 school, because that's basically what they've been recruiting for these last 2 seasons, with the idea that these players will be 4-year Big 12 guys. That's why you're seeing UCF rise up this ladder per se in terms of ranking. I believe they're in the top 20, at least the top 25 for recruiting classes that will start when the Big 12 comes. And I think UCF's goal this season is to get us on the right foot going to the Big 12. They don't want to just go to the Big 12 just to be in the Big 12, right? They want to be in the Big 12 and compete in the Big 12. And I think that with the roster they are building and the culture, more importantly, the culture that they're building, they are positioning themselves to be able to do just that.
I think it makes total sense. And I golf with some UCF administrators in the past who, are no longer there and are at some different P5 schools. And the thing I always told them is like, look, I think it's not crazy to think that long-term UCF competes with a Florida or Miami or Florida State for recruits in the state of Florida. In the short term, a move to the P5, in my opinion, most likely helps them to battle like an NC State or Purdue or Wisconsin for the kids who are more in that sort of like, 35 to 75 in terms of where they rank in the state of Florida. Kids that are really, really good. I mean, kids that honestly some of the assistant coaches only exist on these staffs to go down to the state of Florida and get paid $500,000 to go down there and get them. If they can be more competitive in that area, and I really think that's one thing we've seen so far from Gus Malzahn and his staff, more so than Heupel's staff, right, is trying to compete for some of those kids who make sense. You don't want to just go after guys because he's highly rated. I mean, you want to get the guys that fit your program, but you want to get the most talented dudes who do fit what you do. I really agree with you. I think that's a strong goal for them and something that is achievable.
Heupel almost neglected the Central Florida area, and that's probably the number one place that Gus Malzahn is attacking. So that is the biggest change from regimes, is that Gus is, but also at the same time, Gus is not just keeping an eye on Central Florida. He's got recruits from Georgia. Georgia's really highly recruited from UCF. So, and he's got some Auburn transfers as well, and his relationships with recruits in Alabama and in Mississippi. So obviously the majority of the recruits that are coming in are Florida and Georgia. That's I think the appeal of having a Gus Malzahn coach this team, is that he has recruited the SEC for years. So he has ties with those coaches that are at those high schools in the area that bring him in. And hopefully it gets to a point to where when you get to the Big 12, you're competing with all these Texas schools who have the biggest recruiting hotbed in the country, some would argue.
No doubt about it. All right. And really enjoyed this, Jeremy. And everybody go to Knights247 to check out more excellent UCF content. We'll have to have you back on in the preseason for our fall previews.
All right. Thanks, but appreciate it.
All right. That's the bell. Cover 3 College Football Summer School is over for today. But don't worry. We'll be back soon with even more episodes filling you in on the top teams in college football. Please give us those 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow us on YouTube and on Twitter at Cover 3 Podcast. And we'll see you all soon.